So in the past when I've covered Steam sales on the channel, I always have people comment saying that I should do more videos related to the Steam sale and also make sure that they go out before it ends so that people can actually, take advantage of those deals. So that's what I'm trying to do today by going through some recommendations. Now, every video game that's on this list is not necessarily one that I've already tested on the Steam Deck. Most of them are, but a few of them I actually already had on other platforms, and they are at least verified, or at least I know them to work well on the deck from what I've seen on the internet. So that is what today's video is all about, are some games that I would like to recommend. And then there will be one more video coming on Thursday, which is like my final round of summer sale pickups. That I'm going to try to put out earlier than normal because I think the summer sale is going to end at 1 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, if I'm remembering that correctly. So if that's the case, I'll go ahead and try to get that video out a little bit earlier. So if you do see something you like, you can go ahead and grab it on sale. But for now, let's just go ahead and jump into some of the games that I would just completely recommend, starting with what I think is a AAA classic and one that was criminally underrated, Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I originally played this and beat it on the PS5 when it first came out, and leading up to the release of Guardians of the Galaxy, I was at least a little bit worried because Avengers had just come out like a year prior, and that was not a great experience. And I suspect that kind of lingering memory of Avengers is what led to the rough sales for Guardians of the Galaxy out of the gate. And that's a real shame because Guardians of the Galaxy is a delightful game, not just on its own merit, but it even succeeded at capturing everything that made the Guardians movies great and translated it to video game form, nailing not just the humor, but also the individual character arcs of each of the Guardians. Mechanically, each member of the team has their own strengths that are utilized in appropriate ways, but by far my favorite part of this game are the periodic cuddles that you can engage in to sort of pump up the team and then start wrecking enemies to a pretty incredible 80s soundtrack, and it all comes together beautifully. And it sure doesn't hurt that because the Guardians adventure is naturally set in space across a variety of alien locales, that the game is retina-searingly gorgeous at every turn. If you're a Marvel fan, I think it's an absolute must, and even if you're not a Marvel fan, I'd say it's well written enough that you can enjoy it as a standalone adventure with a whole lot of charm, even if you don't have a lot of familiarity with these characters. And considering it's 70% off right now at $17.99, again, for a great single-player adventure that is not completely littered with DLC or a bunch of extra nonsense, it's a good time to jump in if you haven't played Guardians already. Next up, taking a turn towards horror, is the original Dying Light, which is currently also 70% off, so instead of $29.99, you can grab this for $8.99. Now, I got this on the Xbox One right when it came out back around 2015, and I beat it over the course of about a week because I just couldn't put it down. And then I bought it again on Steam so that I could play it in greater fidelity than what I had on the Switch, so yeah, suffice it to say, I'm a fan of Dying Light. Now, you could go for Dying Light 2, and that's really fun as well, but from a raw bang for the buck perspective, I think that $9 is hard to beat considering the massive amount of gameplay on offer, and if you want to pay an extra $1 for $9.99, you can get the definitive edition that comes with a range of expansions and additional skins. The gameplay in Dying Light is the biggest draw here by a long shot. The story's totally fine. You'll be traversing a fictional Middle Eastern city as an undercover operative who's trying to track down the villain that has data that could lead to a cure for the plague that's responsible for the zombie outbreak. Now, that's all well and good, but what really keeps me coming back to this game nearly a decade after its release are two distinct mechanics. The first is the parkour system, which is just way more fun than it has any right to be, particularly for a game played in the first person. And the other links directly into that mechanic, and that is the day-night cycle, by which during the day, zombies are a little bit more subdued so it's easier to make progress, but as the sun goes down, zombies and special zombies get way more aggressive, and it presents much tougher challenges as you're trying to avoid the horde and make your way back to a safe house. Not to mention this game does support 4-player co-op, which is a very welcome inclusion. It is just a comically fun game that I can confirm does run very well on the Steam Deck, and if you've never played it before, I just can't recommend it enough. And I know there's no shortage of zombie games that you can play on the Steam Deck, but Dying Light still remains one of my all-time favorites. And speaking of 4-player co-op zombie games, this next one is one I'm sure a lot of people already have, but I still think it warrants inclusion on this list because you can get it for $1 right now, and that is Left 4 Dead 2. I don't know what I can really say about Left 4 Dead that you probably don't already know, but if you're one of those people who's just never played it, trust me, just spend the $1 and treat yourself. At its core, you'll be dropped into a range of scenarios where you'll barrel through hordes of zombies from one safe house to the next in a sort of homage to classic zombie flicks, usually culminating in one larger objective to complete if you want to escape the scenario. It's so well done that 14 years later this game is still shockingly good fun, mostly thanks to its excellent AI director that knows when to ratchet the tension up and when to ease off to give players a break to regroup. It's tense, action-packed, has bulletproof co-op gameplay, and it has aged surprisingly well. It also runs really well on the Steam Deck and is, no pun intended, an absolute no-brainer if it's not already in your library. But if you like your open-world horror games to be more of a single-player, more immersive affair, I would definitely recommend that you check out The Evil Within 2, which is 80% off right now for $7.99. Now, full disclosure, I still need to finish this game, but every time I return to it and start chipping it out of my backlog, I have a delightful time. The story is okay and really more of a device to set up the creepy supernatural world that you find yourself in, but what gets me every time is that it actually succeeds at maintaining tension not just in the claustrophobic interiors where you would expect horror to work, but it's just as effective at keeping you creeped out as you traverse a sprawling open world nightmare. Every facet of The Evil Within 2 just feels super polished, from its visuals to its map to its item selection and UX, and it's a whole lot of fun weighing the risk and reward of disturbing a pack of horrors on the open street to reach your objective, or wondering whether it's safe to wander off the beaten path into a secure vault that is probably filled with great loot, but also unimaginable horrors. Even years later, it's slick, it performs well on the deck, and again, it's a steal at $7.99 if you're looking to bolster your horror collection, provided you don't mind a healthy dose of action layered on top of it. And while we're on the subject of action games, this next one is a top-down hidden gem of sorts in my book, and I really wanted to include it on that video I did a couple weeks back about top-down action games that you can play on the deck, but I didn't quite have it on the deck yet, and now I do thanks to the sale, and it is on sale for 75% off at $7.49 rather than $29.99, which I think is a good price, and that is Darksiders Genesis. Now, I actually played through this and beat it on the Switch when it first came out a couple of years ago, and no, it's not the best action game I've ever played, and honestly, it's not even the best Darksiders game I've played, which at present would probably be Darksiders 2, but it is a whole lot of fun and provides another fun twist on the Darksiders series, moving away from a more gothic take on the Zelda/God of War formula in favor of a top-down action RPG. So yeah, it's a bit of a spin-off, and you'll be playing as either Strife or War at any given time. Strife is really great at range, while War is the better choice for up-close and personal combat. They're both fun to play, and collecting souls to progress your heroes is an enjoyable process, and it's all pretty slickly stylized in a very comic book sort of way. Sure, at times it can feel like Strife is really channeling Star-Lord, but still, if you're looking for a fun action romp that you can knock out in 10 to 15 hours, Genesis is certainly worth a look, and even though jumping in here wouldn't technically have you playing it in release order, I still think Darksiders Genesis would allow you to enjoy the mainline entries of the series, assuming you appreciate the world that it builds out here. And again, at $7.49, I think that's a much more palatable price to kind of jump in on what is a spin-off from the series, rather than the full price at $29.99. And finally, the last game on this list is a more modern action hidden gem that I really enjoyed. It came out this year, it's 50% off right now at $29.99 rather than $59.99, and it won't be everyone's cup of tea, but I had a tremendous time playing through it, and considering it only takes 6 to 8 hours to beat, I think 50% off is probably the right price for most people, and that is Wanted Dead. So I beat Wanted Dead months ago on the PS5 after the publisher kicked me a code for it, and I loved it so much that I went back and bought the collector's edition just because I really wanted to support their work. And at first I wasn't going to include it on this list because, again, I know this won't be everyone's cup of tea, but I have to believe that at least some of you who regularly hang out on the channel have a fondness for those early 2000s action games, and this is a pitch-perfect throwback to exactly that era. It's a bit light on plot, heavy on style, and real heavy on what it demands from the player. Stepping into the high tops of Hannah Stone, you'll be leading an elite Hong Kong police squad named Zombie Unit that's on a mission to uncover a corporate conspiracy. The voice acting is all over the place in this game, and I'm honestly not sure if some of the lo-fi design choices are intentional, or just because the devs thought they could get away with it because they framed the game as like an ironic love letter to the late 90s and early 2000s, but either way, it sure worked on me. Playing as Hannah, you'll have a sword and firearms at your disposal, and while you might think that you can just run in with either to get the job done, you would definitely be mistaken. And in a Soulsian fashion, Wanted Dead will definitely force you to learn how to play it correctly. And again, this is far from a perfect game, but it is an incredibly fulfilling one if you stick with it, and it's been one of my favorite surprises of 2023. So if you were curious about it but didn't want to shell out $60 for the privilege of testing out a game that might be worth your while, $29.99 feels like a major improvement, and if you want to scratch some PS2 era action game itch, then Wanted Dead definitely delivers. Alright, so that's it for this one. Again, this list is not necessarily just recent pickups where I kind of spent some time with it and just confirmed that it works well on the deck, but rather these are games I've spent a lot of time with, if not just straight up beaten myself, and can hardly recommend if you're looking for a discount on some titles that you might not have explored. So, what about you? Is there any singular game that you would recommend to somebody from the summer sale, one that you've already beaten or spent a ton of time with that you think represents just an undeniable value? If so, I would love to hear your thoughts below. Also, again, Thursday is when I will do my final round of pickups from the Steam sale, because I did get some other new stuff that I've been toying around with, and it's actually some pretty cool stuff that you recommended, but I'll get to all that on Thursday. But for now, thank you again, as always, so much for your time. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.